Good evening, everyone. Sorry about the late start. We had a couple technical issues, but thank you for joining us tonight to talk about Bout Hills and the announcement we made on Friday that with our shift to remote learning for 2 weeks. I'm going to share my screen and walk through a presentation that I prepared for tonight to go over a couple key points. So give me one moment. So our my goals for tonight are, one, for us to connect as a school community, review the events that led us to this point, provide more information about the short-term shift to remote over the next 2 weeks, talking about schedule, talking about expectations, talking about instruction, and then also follow up and respond to questions that families have submitted. So I will be responding to questions submitted up to right around 4:15, 4:30 today via the Google form I emailed out via School Messenger. Before we move forward, I just want to take a moment and just reiterate that our priority in the district and about Hills is the health and safety of all our community members. And so, tonight as we meet, we do have individuals who we all care deeply about, who are really confronting the realities of the virus, being COVID positive. And I just want them to know, if they are with us tonight, that our thoughts and prayers are with them and their families, and really they are our priority. So as we proceed forward and talk about everything else, just to remember that the health and safety of our friends and our loved ones are what's really important. So based upon a couple questions and conversations that I've had in the last 24, 36 hours, I thought it would be helpful to just review the events that were communicated either by myself to individuals on the phone or via Mr. Kaur's messages to the entire district. So we were alerted on Wednesday, the 21st, of a confirmed COVID positive case at Bout Hills. And it was determined the individual who was COVID positive was last in the building on Thursday, October 15th. We did send other individuals home that were not COVID positive based upon possible exposure on Wednesday, the 21st, after consulting with the Department of Health. So individuals in a first grade classroom that had been in contact with the COVID positive individual were sent home because of possible exposure. As the timeline continued, we also learned on Wednesday of a confirmed COVID positive case on a bus, a morning bus and an afternoon bus. And that individual who was COVID positive was last present and around other members of our school community on Friday, October 16th. So again, on Wednesday, individuals who were on that bus and possibly exposed to the individual who was COVID positive were sent home from Bout Hills and from our 4 through 6 campus. And as Mr. Kaur's email explained, it affected students at multiple campuses who were sent home because of possible exposure. And then on Friday the 23rd, while the students were home at the elementary level for their remote half day, we were alerted of 4 additional confirmed COVID positive cases from the same first grade class from whom we had sent individuals home on Wednesday, the 21st. So at that point, I did contact each family who had, each family who had children on buses that may have come in contact with those positive COVID cases. So I know a lot of families have asked me, should I get tested? Was my student exposed? I spoke with all families who had possible exposure. So I just want to clarify that while also being careful not to disclose any identifying information, because we still need to protect the privacy of those individuals who were confirmed COVID positive. At this point on Friday, after the 4 additional confirmed cases, there was a recommendation made and the subsequent decision by our district leadership to close Bout Hills, the K3 campus, not the 4-6 campus at the junior high, the K3 campus for 2 weeks. So I wanted to sort of run through those events because I felt that it just provides a little bit of clarity and maybe a little bit of ease for some folks who are wondering if their child had a possible exposure. And when I looked at the parent questions that were submitted, the majority of parent questions revolved around health and safety. And so I felt it would be prudent to address those first as we meet tonight. So as I did in sort of the reopening meetings that we did in August, I've included every single question because I want you to know what our community members are thinking and concerned about. So the first question is, will we learn more about the circumstances surrounding the spread of the 5 individuals in one class? So I wanted to, in the previous slide, I broke down those events. So I wanted to be clear so you understood that we had a confirmed case in the first grade classroom, then we had a confirmed case on a bus, and then we had 4 additional confirmed cases related to that first grade classroom. And that's when the decision was made to shift to remote learning for 2 weeks. The second question, Friday's email from the district said that the health department is working as quickly as they can to contact individuals. However, it may take a few days for them to reach out due to the volume of calls. Will the district be able to advise us when everyone has been contacted so we do not have to be nervously waiting for a call from DOH that might not even come? So I just want to let everyone know that I've personally called anyone who had contact with the COVID positive cases who we suspected had a possible exposure. I called all individuals or families of individuals if they were children. So if you heard from me, you can anticipate a call from DOH because your name and contact information was provided to DOH. If you did not hear from me, we didn't determine direct contact. However, through their contact tracing protocols, the Department of Health may determine differently and may call. So I did tell everyone I talked to, I'm not an authority. I'm just delivering a message that we determined there was direct contact, and we gave that information to the Department of Health. So you may be getting a call, and I'm sorry if you are waiting nervously and unsure. I know it's a harrowing situation that many of us are in. Another question that parents had was more of a statement, I guess. Can you please restate the importance of following state and health guidelines outside of the school setting? So again, we are putting in a lot of protocols inside the school with social distancing and wearing a mask. And I would encourage all of our school community to be responsible citizens, listen to the scientists, wear a mask, limit contact if you can. I do understand that kids are still involved in activities like sports and some extracurricular activities, and I do encourage that also. But let's do it safely. And we are, while we're closed, continuing to examine what we're doing at Bout Hills and thinking if we need to put in any other safety protocols in place. And I know Ms. McFawn and Mr. Chamberlain are doing the same thing at the 4-6 campus. So we're constantly looking at our practice and seeing if we can do things better and we can do things safer. Another question asking about the cohorts. Isn't the point of pods that if there was a breakout, the whole school wouldn't need to be closed? So given the outbreak is only in one first grade classroom, why shut down the whole school as opposed to limiting the quarantine to the one class or even the first grade wing of the building and or the siblings of the infected students. So I do agree with the statement. The cohort model is structured to prevent spread. However, in this case, the Department of Health made the recommendation to close the school. I do agree with the Department of Health's recommendation, and I do think the cohort model did help limit potential exposure. So even though it did not prevent the short-term closure in this case, I think it still helped limiting the spread and played an important role. So we will stick with the cohort model. And again, our goal is to stay open. And so we're going to continue to look at our protocols and see if we can do anything better when we come back on the 9th. Another question, is any consideration being given to the American Academy of Pediatrics recommendation that kids be taught in person, or the statistics reflecting that kids of this age are not among the at-risk population? Are we concerned about failing our students and children during these critical formative years and their families who pay their taxes and rely on school to enable them to earn a living? So when I read this question, the first thing I did was I sensed the frustration, and I understand this is frustrating for us to have to do this short-term closure. I more than anything, and our staff more than anything, wants Bout Hills to remain open for in-person instruction. So we are all frustrated at these turn of events. I feel like we've worked really hard to open, even in the face of criticism from some stakeholders, because we too share the sentiment that school and being in person is important and extremely critical to children's development. At this time, however, we have to prioritize health and safety, and we have to listen to the experts in this case. And they've told us that they feel if we don't close, that this could become a larger and larger issue. And so that's the reason the recommendation was made and the decision was made to have the short-term closure. But we will do all we can to keep kids engaged and keep them growing. I understand that it's a burden on families for students not to be in school as scheduled. Another question, will the building continue to be sanitized on a daily basis while closed to ensure the virus is out of the building itself when the children return to school? So we will have a deep cleaning that starts in the building on Monday morning, and that deep cleaning will last a number of days to make sure that our custodial staff is doing all they can to get rid of the virus inside the school. And again, the health and safety questions were sort of our largest amount of questions, so I felt it was important to go through it first before we get into the other items. Another question, should our children receive testing in the meantime, and will it be required for return for all students and faculty to be tested? So right now, getting tested is really a family decision. It will not be required to return upon reopening of the building. The Department of Health, again, will be reaching out to some families. And so again, I'm not an authority. I don't work for the Department of Health. Their message might be different. I would suggest, if you're wondering if you should be tested, that you contact your medical provider, and they may have more advice. They may have a recommendation. I will tell you, many families have taken the step to get tested, but again, consultation with your medical provider is probably the best first step. We had a couple questions about—
Mr. Puccioni, I would just say, sorry, I would just say, in conversation with the Department of Health, if your child is symptomatic and you are able to get your child to have a test, then you should. If your child is asymptomatic, then certainly you can talk with your family care physician, or you can get a test if that makes you feel better. But certainly if your child is symptomatic, we would encourage you to have your child tested.
Thank you, Ms. Skills. A couple questions. The next couple questions were about siblings in the 4-6 building. So a question about an older brother who's at the middle school. Should I be concerned with sending my older son to the middle school as both of them reside in the same household? So again, our K-3 students are at home. their siblings can continue to go to school as scheduled. We have not been directed by the Department of Health to exclude siblings from school. Older siblings may continue to attend. I did have a conversation with the family about a work schedule and needing to keep an older sibling home to care for younger siblings. I understand that families have to make all types of decisions. I've talked with Ms. McFawn quite a bit about this, and she's communicated to the teachers at the 4-6 building. And I'm going to use her language right here, that we need to consider the impact of differences in access, available adults to assist, as well as the stressors of quarantine and health concerns on families when evaluating student work and work completion. Our plan is to hold students harmless. So whether a student is in quarantine or needing to stay home to support a family during this time, we are not going to act in a punitive way. And every situation is unique. So I would say the best case scenario is if you have a question, that you reach out to your students' teachers or to myself or Ms. McFawn, and we can help work through that process. But again, our goal is not to have students negatively impacted by this experience. I understand that they're missing out on school and missing out on instruction, and that's not a positive thing, but we don't want to compound that issue with anything punitive. So again, we're trying to keep our students and their physical and mental health at the forefront of all the decisions we are making. We will make some mistakes sometimes, but again, we are not above being reflective, identifying when we made a mistake, and doing what's right for kids.
Mr. Piccioni, and I think it's important too at this point in time to restate that the Department of Health has defined a direct contact as someone who has had extended exposure to someone who has tested COVID positive. So then if a student in the K-3 school had that direct contact with someone, students in the 4-6 school would generally be considered contacts of a contact. That is why they are not being directed by the Department of Health to quarantine. And only the Department of Health can direct an individual to quarantine.
Thanks, Mr. Core. Another question. I believe the answer is no, but does a grade 4 through 6 student need to quarantine if their sibling is quarantined from exposure? No, they do not. Okay, unless the Department of Health reaches out and directs one to quarantine, other siblings can continue to attend school. Continuing with a few more questions. Can you please explain why 4-6 siblings of the first grade class that has several positive COVID cases are allowed to report to in-person school at the junior high? Again, they did not have the direct contact. And so as Mr. Core explained, when making determinations for quarantine, the Department of Health looks at direct contacts. So right now, siblings have not been directed to quarantine, only those children that had possible exposure. Are all students in the first grade class that had positive cases required to be tested? Again, as Ms. Skeels explained, if one is symptomatic, seek out advice from your medical provider and a test. Otherwise, unless directed by the Department of Health, I would speak to your medical provider and listen to their guidance. Another question, going forward, will a single classroom go remote as soon as there is one positive case to mitigate asymptomatic spread? So currently, every time we learn of a confirmed COVID positive case, we consult with the Department of Health. The Department of Health makes recommendations and the district follows those recommendations. So I do believe in this case, everyone has acted in an abundance of caution and made the right recommendations. but each case will be unique. So I cannot say with certainty what will happen if there's another COVID positive case, other than that we will work quickly and closely with the Department of Health. This last one it's long. I'm going to synthesize it, but I thought it was important. So the individual is has a child. The individual who submitted the question has a child in the first grade class and heard about exposure from 10:15 last Thursday. And the question is, was there exposure after that time? Because it would help the family decide when to get tested and or what information to give to be most accurate. So I just want to really clarify, the last known exposure was Wednesday, the 21st. And again, we learned about additional confirmed positive cases on Friday, the 23rd, and determined the last known exposure or possible exposure was on Wednesday, the 21st. So if you need to talk to your medical provider or discuss as a family, if you were in that first grade classroom, you have that information. For the students who were, and this is the students who were sent home on, the first grade students who were sent home on Wednesday, the 21st. If you have additional, more personal questions, feel free to, reach out to me directly. Again, I can't answer everything, but I might be able to direct you where you could find better answers or more answers. I want to shift the conversation just a little bit from health and safety to the next 2 weeks. So we are shifting to remote learning for K-3 at Bout Hills for a short-term period of 2 weeks, starting tomorrow, Monday, through Friday the 6th. The plan is to return to in-person on Monday, November 9th. And I just want to make a point that our shift to remote, it's going to be different than it was in March last year. So last year, we were almost entirely asynchronous, but our shift this year, as we can try to continue instruction and continue education, will be more similar to our remote elementary school. So we've made a decision that we are going to mirror our daily schedule. So students in K-3 at Bout Hills will begin their day at 10 a.m. And their day will go through until 2:30 p.m. We're going to follow the same schedule. So students will have lunch at the same time, a lunch break at the same time they have a lunch break during the regular school day. They'll have an opportunity to engage with their specials class at the same time they would have specials during the regular school day. And students who receive different services will have the ability to access those services at their regularly scheduled times. The day will be filled with not just asynchronous work, but a synchronous component. So a live component where the teacher is actively working with the students. And again, this is going to be similar to our current remote program that Mr. Deneen oversees. And it will have an asynchronous component at points. Our social classes will be asynchronous. And what that means is when it's time for art with Miss Duffy or music with Miss White or PE with Coach All and Coach Williams or library with Miss Wallace, that there will be an assignment or a task that students undertake, and it will be possibly a video they watch and then an assignment they do. They won't have live instruction from their specials teacher. There may also be some asynchronous components, so times when students are allowed a chunk of time to work independently. For example, there might be a math lesson that goes 30 minutes and then students have a 15-minute window, 20-minute window to work independently. The asynchronous components will also cover lunch, so students will not be gathered during lunch. And we're also looking at adding some breaks throughout the day so students don't work extended times on the, looking at the screen. So there might be, for example, a reading lesson that goes for 30 minutes, 15 minutes of independent work, and then a 15-minute break within an hour chunk. Our teachers are going to be sharing their individual class schedules with you. I know some teachers have already had Zoom meetings with families. Some are scheduled for later this evening. Some teachers are sending email messages to families with the schedule, and some are using their communication platforms like Dojo. So teachers should be reaching out from all the K-3 classrooms and letting parents know what to expect tomorrow with the schedule. If at any time you're confused as a parent, reach out to your teacher. I'm also available. You can reach out to me and we'll try to work through it together. Anytime we transition, there's always a few hiccups. So I can imagine tomorrow and Tuesday, there might be some questions that pop up. So please reach out if need be. The big point I want to make is it will be different than last year because students will be expected to be in their remote classroom at specific times, engaging with new instruction with the teachers. So a couple parent questions. I put this one first because I think it brings up a good point and something that might be a reality for many folks that chose in-person instruction instead of remote instruction at the start of the year. So it's not possible for us to follow a 10 to 2:30 p.m. schedule due to both parents needing to work with mandatory schedules. Will students be penalized for completing work later in the day when parents are available? At the K level, it's not possible for him to sit unattended and work without assistance. So as I mentioned, we do have a schedule for each grade and each class. And I want to encourage families to follow it as closely as possible. We understand that, you didn't choose remote. You don't have things set up to support the remote learning. We aren't going to try to penalize kids if for some reason they can't be part of the session. The kindergartners, especially these first few days, they will need help. The teachers have been doing a great job practicing with the students in class, how to access Seesaw, how to access Google Classroom. But again, there will be some hiccups, and I believe some families may have experienced that, the level of support needed this Friday when we did our practice remote day. One difference between Friday and the upcoming 2 weeks is there will be a more synchronous component where teachers are there and present and helping guide students in the activities. Our teachers are also working to be creative and how to use the breakout rooms to make small groups so that kids can ask questions in smaller settings. But I anticipate that the students will need help. So I don't think I've answered the question. So my answer is do the best that you can. If there is something that prohibits you or your student from being there, please be in communication with myself and with the teachers. But we want everyone to try their best to be present because we don't want to lose 2 weeks, and these are official days of school. A question, where will CYC be held through 6th graders while the building is closed? So CYC, the district has worked with CYC, and Latham Ridge will be the new place for our 4 through 6 students in CYC. So again, our K through 3 students are at home, so they would not attend CYC, but our 4 through 6 students can be dropped off and picked up at the same times at Latham Ridge, and bus 124 will be transporting the students in the morning over to the junior high campus and transporting them back in the afternoon to Latham Ridge. One family member asked, I couldn't help but notice the use of the word hope in connection with the anticipated reopening date in 2 weeks. Under what scenario would we not reopen after this drastic measure of closing the whole school? So I did use the word hope purposefully. just like I used the word planned in a previous slide purposefully. So a return date of November 9th has been set. But again, decisions are made in consultation with the Department of Health. So I put hope and I put planned because there's always a probability that something else happens. I don't see that probability coming into play. Right now, we're all planning to be back here on November 9th. We want to be here. But again, I put hope and I put planned because what we've learned from this is there's always a probability that something unplanned or atypical will happen. Another question, will the bus times be affected for 4 through 6 students now that K through 3 students won't be riding them for 2 weeks? The schedule will stay the same, but I would expect your 4 through 6 students to probably arrive home a little bit quicker, maybe 10 to 15 minutes earlier than normal, because there is no stop at Bout Hills. So they will be leaving the junior high at the same time. They just don't have that extra stop and wait for the K3 kids to load up. So I would anticipate that they will probably be at their stop a little bit earlier. So if they are expecting someone to meet them there, I would maybe plan to be there 15 minutes earlier than normal. I want to talk a little bit more about our shift to remote daily attendance. So our teachers will be taking attendance in the morning. We need to keep accurate records of who is attending. It is a regular school day. We expect students to be there. One of the previous questions that we went over was a family talking about how it's going to be hard for them to make that happen. Again, we want you to do the best. We'll do our best not to penalize students, whether it be their score. If a student were to miss a couple days, in kindergarten, sometimes people ask me about retention. That's the last thing on our mind. Again, we just want to know what we can do to help your student be present and be learning. So if something is stopping them and you need help problem solving, I'm available. I can't solve every problem, but if we can talk through something, we might be able to find some type of solution. But we expect students to be present, logged on in the morning, and teachers will take attendance, and Ms. Sauer will be calling if students are not there, checking in to see why students are not present. Our expectations are that students attend the synchronous components, that students complete independent work to the best of their ability. And I put in there the language that Ms. McFawn had crafted, because I want you to just be reassured that we're not looking to penalize any students for something that's beyond their control. I have a couple sample schedules. These are not exact schedules, but just sort of a synthesis of some of what's going on the grade level. So if I look at kindergarten, from 10 to 10:30, we would have a morning meeting and do some phonemic awareness, phonics exercises. The students would have a period of independent work, a bathroom snack break, 30-minute ELA lesson. Again, some independent work with phonics. And at this time during independent work, it provides teachers the chance to sometimes work with small groups, a bathroom break, math instruction, again, independent or small group work, a lunch break, time to do their specials. And then those are asynchronous, so families can really choose right there. If the child wanted to do specials at 12:45, they'd be able to access it and then take lunch after that, and then ending the day with a read aloud and writing. Again, teachers will be in contact with specifics. We did try to break up chunks of the day by adding some breaks in there. And the teachers have different strategies that they'll be sharing. Perhaps if you're on Zoom during the break, everyone's muted, and then they come back together, but they don't log out of Zoom so that students don't have to go through the same process of logging in. Second grade, morning meeting, and then you see there's an hour math chunk, and the teacher would work within that hour math chunk to take apart and make that direct instruction, a time for small group or independent, and then working a break into there. And the breaks might be slightly different depending on the day. 10 minutes, 15 minutes, depending on what the lesson entails. Shared reading, specials and lunch, reading, writing, and phonics, a break, and ending the day with social studies and science. So again, teachers will be communicating to families what their schedule is. And we're really, trying to be creative and work with the teachers who are currently teaching remotely to think about best practices. Sample third grade schedule. Again, we're mirroring the normal day. So our third graders would come and have their morning meeting, have their specials time right there, maybe a quick intervention block, math, reading, and the teachers would put in breaks where appropriate. So students aren't spending an hour and a half straight staring at the screen. Lunch, science, social studies, writing, small groups, independent practice before leaving for the day. So a couple parent questions. This parent question is about kindergarten and the remote learning that took place on Friday and the difficulty in navigating and the assistance that was required. So the question the parent asks is, have you given any thought to having the teacher provide instruction directly to the kids versus having the kids go to numerous sites for instruction? This would eliminate the need to navigate from site to site and read/interpret instructions. This would also be more similar to what they're used to with in-person learning. So I feel like Friday was a good day. We got a lot of good feedback. And yes, I agree with the individual who asked this question. Our goal is to have more synchronous sessions. Friday, we had the synchronous morning meeting and then students were working independently. So the schedule going forward will have more of a mix of teachers working directly with students during the lesson and then launching the students out into an activity. There will still need to be some navigation, and I do anticipate that our youngest learners will continue to need support, especially as they get used to this new setting. Another question about instruction, a parent asked, the teacher sent a schedule indicating that from 1:15 to 2:30, there would be whole group and independent instruction. If a parent has to go and pick up a child from the junior high building and has to be there at 2 p.m. for the pickup, will the first grade student missing class daily from 1:40 to 2:35 be penalized, and how will that work be made up? So I'll go back to what I was talking through earlier. The work will be available. Please communicate that to the teacher. The student will not be penalized. The student may miss some of the synchronous component, but in the short term, I'm sure that they can make that up with independent work. And again, we don't want students to be negatively impacted. So this student, we wouldn't want them to be worried or stressed out about missing that last part of the day because they had to go pick up a sibling. And I'm sure our teacher would support that and give that message so the child would not be upset because of those circumstances. And then the parent can work in the afternoon, maybe when you get home from the pickup, or later in the evening to make that work up. And if there's a day that it doesn't work, just communicate to the teacher that we could not get to it because of our family schedule. Another question, given the potential for school going remote through the year, possibly for extended periods, will students receive textbooks as those who chose remote did? So I believe our teachers are prepared for the next 10 days. Again, it's not ideal, but they're prepared, and I just want to give an affirmation to them. So many of them came in after hours or early Saturday morning to gather materials. And so just we're extremely lucky to have such a dedicated group of educators. So they're prepared for the next 10 days to the best of their ability. If the closure were to extend, we will schedule a pickup for additional materials. So right now we're not sending textbooks home or workbooks home. If the closure were to continue for an unforeseen reason, then we will schedule a pickup. So again, our goal is that we're back here on the 9th, the students are back with their materials, and we pick up with our in-person instruction. The next question I'm going to ask our Assistant Director of People Services, Ms. Heather Quinn, to come on and answer this one about special education services.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. So during this closure for the 9 days, our special education staff do plan on running your child's schedule as we have developed it in person. We will be looking for feedback for you, as Mr. Piccioni keeps saying, because as you can imagine, this schedule was developed for in-person learning. So we have students, especially if they receive multiple related services, they may move from provider to provider. They may get daily check-ins for a few minutes for people. And our goal is not to overwhelm our students during this time or you with multiple Zoom sessions or multiple meetings that students have to attend or multiple therapy sessions. So we will really be looking for your feedback to our special education staff, both related services and our teachers, about what is working during this time. Our special education teachers may also be reaching out to you as they give you your child's schedule, because they also may be wanting to provide you with breakout sessions that they'll be doing with your children and explaining how those services will be delivered during that time. We truly want to support our special education students as much as possible during this time, and we want to create opportunities for them that are going to be meaningful and also meeting their goals. We might be utilizing different platforms such as Seesaw, Google Classroom, things like that. So again, we'll be in communication with you about that. Staff will also be in touch with you about your virtual special education therapy sessions, what times those will be, what those will be looking like, and they'll also be asking for confidentiality during sessions. As you can imagine, this is going to be quite different and maybe not like what it was in the spring. So our staff will be sending things home to you that we would like you to communicate back with us. If you have any questions during this time at all, please reach out to your special education staff. You can also reach out to me or Mr. Piccioni as well, and we are happy to help you through a phone call, email, or a Zoom. We appreciate your support during this time. We look forward to working with you.
Thanks, Ms. Quinn. So I want to touch just quickly on 4 through 6 in-person students. So I know that due to possible exposure on the bus, some 4 through 6 students have been sent home, contacted by the Department of Health, and are currently in quarantine. So Ms. McFawn has been working with our 4th, 5th, and 6th grade teams. Teachers will continue posting work to Google Classroom that coincides with in-class learning. And they're working to differentiate so that students who are working from home understand exactly what they need to access and complete versus what students are doing in class, because they're already using Google Classroom quite a bit. So they're working to differentiate that so it's not confusing for students who are working from home. And again, teachers will hold harmless, considering the impact of all those different factors. And if there are supplies that you feel are needed to support your student, you can contact Ms. McFawn to arrange a contact-free pickup. So in this transition, technology, again, is extremely important for access. So if there's issues with Chromebook, if there's issues with internet access, you can reach out to me directly. You can also contact our IT department. The phone number and email are on the screen right here. If you're not sure who to reach out to, reaching out to me is always a good first step, and then I can sort of send your message somewhere else. It might be quicker if you reach out to IT directly, but feel free to reach out to me again if there's an issue with the Chromebook or an issue with internet access. In Mr. Kaur's letter home on Friday, he talked about meal distribution. So families in need of meals, lunch and breakfast continue to be available and free of charge. There'll be pickups on Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays while our school is in 100% remote learning. So for these next 2 weeks, each Monday and Wednesday, the meal pack will include 2 lunches and 2 breakfasts, and Fridays will include 1 of each. Blue Creek Elementary is the location for pickup from 10 to 11 a.m. You don't have to sign up for it. So anyone who that day, if you decide we need to pick up, you can go. And any questions, again, you can direct questions to me and I will help find the answer. But Ms. Ostrowski, our child nutrition supervisor, will be a good contact too. And her email is listed here on the screen. And just quickly, we had a couple school events in the school coming up. So our Walk for Funds on the 7th. It had been scheduled for the 7th. So right now, again, we can't hold that event as scheduled. I talked with Dr. Vino, our PTA president, just briefly by email today. Dr. Vino, thank you for your patience and my response time. And she's going to be working with the PTA and advising our school community by the end of this coming week. 10/28 this Wednesday remains a half day. So that was already scheduled to be a remote half day. So students again will follow the same routine as they did this past Friday. Log on with the teachers first thing in the morning and then work independently until around midday. And teachers will continue to hold conferences with parents on the 28th. So again, I want to thank everyone for all their support. I want to thank you for attending tonight. Everyone here on the screen, thank you so much for helping us as we made this transition. And I want to send a heartfelt thank you to our teachers who are working so hard behind the scenes. The shift last spring, the shift this year, with how different things have been, and just as we're getting in the groove and making things work, this next shift. So I can't tell you how much I appreciate everything you're doing that is unseen. And a huge thank you to our families too. And I'll just end by, again, even though the latter half of our conversation tonight focused on our transition to remote learning, still keeping at the forefront of our thoughts those individuals who are confronting the virus tonight in their homes, and our thoughts and prayers continue to be with you. So thank you, everyone. If you have questions, concerns, something that wasn't addressed tonight, feel free to email me directly, and I will be reaching out to you soon. Thank you.